Thank you, Karina. It's great to be with you here in Squaw Valley. What a place. A couple of weeks ago, I did the Colorado Wanderlust and started kind of a two-part thing for Wanderlust to have video abilities here. Kind of a two-part question, which are the two most common questions I get all around the world, and that is all this organic stuff and this pastured livestock and local food and all. It sounds warm and fuzzy and hippie and it's kind of soft and gentle, but can it really feed the world? And I answered that question 2 weeks ago at the Colorado Wanderlust. And if you want to see that, of course, look at the video. But the bottom line on that is, if we had had a Manhattan Project for compost, not only would we have fed the world, we would have done it without three-legged salamanders, infertile frogs, and a dead zone the size of New Jersey in the Gulf of Mexico. All right? So that's kind of the bottom line for that. And there's a whole lot of other context and cool stuff along with it. The second part of that question is, so let's assume we can feed the world. It's physically possible to generate the food. In fact, I would suggest the only way, the most efficacious way, and in fact, multi-speciation and complex relational synergies and symbiosis between things actually produces way more per square yard than monospeciation, confinement animal feeding operations, and having to walk through sheep dip and put on a hazmat suit to go to your monocropped sprayed field, all right? So we can indeed feed the world. Then the question is, can we do it affordably? And the question of price. And so that's the second question. The first one is, can we physically produce the food? Number two is, then can we afford it once we've produced it? Because after all, is this organic thing and local food thing not really just an elitist movement that leaves everybody except doctors and attorneys and trial lawyers in the dark behind? And so I want to address that today with several ideas. Number one, in this country, we have an official orthodoxy in the culture which assumes cheap food is a good thing. Now, I want to ask you, can you think of any other saleable item in our culture in which we have such a cheapness mystique as we do food? I mean, cheap automobiles. No. We say you get what you pay for, right? You pay very little, you get a piece of junk. You want a good thing, you pay a little extra for it. Do we have a mystique? Does anybody believe that we get better education if we don't pay for education? Like, the best colleges in the world are the cheapest ones, right? Of course not. That's not what we generally believe. How about clothes? The best clothes are the cheapest ones. The ones that last long and look good, they're the cheapest ones. Shoes. We've got a lot of women in the group. Shoes, right? Are the most longest lasting, well-wearing shoes the cheapest? I mean, I could go on and on. How about private instruction, alternative instruction like yoga instruction? We get the best instruction by making sure that the best teachers are the cheapest ones. You see the anomaly here? In every other part of our world, we associate quality with an escalating price, except food. So what does a cheap food policy do? When you have a cultural assumption that food should be cheap, what does that do? Well, it does several things. Number one, it disrespects the landscape food stewards that are producing it. You see, I'm a big believer that farmers should be white-collar salaried people. Not by government mandate, but by sheer cultural understanding that if we put the stewardship of our air, soil, and water and the fuel for our bodies in the hands of the cheapest, most doltish, peasant-oriented, lowest echelons, D students of our society, maybe we will have poor land and food stewardship. Maybe. So it deprives when we have a cheap food policy, it deprives our entire food culture the respect and the honor and the incentivization to attract the best and brightest of our culture to practice integrity ecological food stewardship, which is another word for agriculture. But I like to call agriculture or farming food stewardship because that's ultimately what it is. And one of our problems is we've separated farming from food. That's why I have an agreement with Michael Pollan that we'd probably get along a lot better with the farm bill if we actually called it a food bill, because it has to do with the food system, as if farming can be separated from food, which of course people like Monsanto and Tyson's and Ciba-Geigy and Taco Bell and Kentucky Fried Chicken want us to think that farming can be divorced from food. Because they take these raw materials produced on farms and then they, manipulate them and extrude them and irradiate them and procrastinate them and adulterate them and, stabilize them with emulsifiers and dye them with, unpronounceable hydrocarbon chains, and, out the end comes food that you and I are supposed to eat. I mean, we're far more concerned about the purity of the gasoline in our hybrid Prius than we are the fuel for our own bodies in our culture. So a cheap price policy actually dumbs down and results in poor food production and landscape stewardship. All right? So the food that we spend more for actually pumps more money into an integrity foodscape. And that's a good thing, because then it creates to us an incentivized integrity food system. So at the outset, I don't believe that a culture that thinks it's good to have the cheapest food on the planet, the cheapest per capita consumption of food, is a noble goal. I mean, in the last 35 years in the U.S., we have exchanged a per capita expenditure on food of 18% of per capita salary and 9% on health care. And we have flipped that around in 35 years to an average 9% on food and 18% on health care. Now, is that a better society? I would suggest not. Is there any relation between the two? Possibly. All right? Just possibly. So I would suggest that a culture that actually spends a little more on food could be a healthier culture. No culture can be healthier physically, emotionally, economically, spiritually than its appreciation and incentivization of integrity resource stewardship. We talk about the Dow Jones going up and down, and we talk about stocks and bonds and all sorts of, things that express the movements of wealth and movements of luxury in our culture, but we don't talk about an earthworm index. We don't talk about a humus index. See? And in fact, we have our whole, food production programs subsidizing that which would deprive our culture of water, soil, and clean air. All you've got to do is go by, the subsidized cornfields of irrigated Nebraska and Kansas with the Ogallala Aquifer, dropping at 10 feet a year, and the desertification of the American West and the dehydration of the landscape, and you begin to realize that gross domestic product pillages and rapes the resource base and deprives our grandchildren of the abundance that the earth would like to bestow upon us. So, can we all agree that it would be okay for us to maybe not buy quite as many People magazines and put more money in food? Okay? Or not buy quite as many pharmaceuticals and put more money in food. You know, wouldn't it be cool if the money that goes to Johnson and Pfizer and Merck and Bayer would go instead to building earthworm populations and mycorrhizae and fungi and nematodes and all sorts of cool stuff. And building that community of beings, you see. All right. So a cheap food policy is no good. All right. Now let me get the very politically incorrect part of my thinking out of the way, right at the top. All right. The question always comes up, well, what about the divorced mother of 4 in poverty in a food desert in the city who can't afford this kind of food? Whenever somebody tells me, you know, I can't afford your food, I want to grab them and say, okay, take me to your house or your condo or your apartment or your wherever it is, okay? Take me there, and here is what we're not going to find. Right. We're not going to find People magazine, Netflix, widescreen TVs, soda, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, $100 designer jeans with holes already in the knees. We're not going to find takeout. We're not going to find Papa John's pizza boxes in the trash can. We're not going to find, potato chips. Boy, when you start going down that list, it turns out that there are very few, even poor households in this country that would qualify. See, we live in a time where it's politically correct and we garner social angst for agonizing over victims. But one of the reasons that we're here at this festival is because we believe ultimately health, wellness, and thriving lives are autonomous, independent responsibilities. And we say, yes, I'm going to devote time and attention to being well, feeling well, and healthcare is ultimately not a government thing, it's an individual choice. Ouch! You see. Sounds like a libertarian. All right, that's I am. It's okay. All right. But what's happened is that we have become such a paralyzed culture, because if we can't answer the most extreme case, suddenly we say, well then I can't do anything. And the fact is that I don't have all the answers for the inner city desert single mom with 4 kids. You know, I wish I had a simple answer for that extreme example. But you know what? We can sit here all day, form committees and focus groups, agonizing over what to do about her. The big deal is, what about all the soccer moms with 5-acre suburban estates who take their kids 3 hours one way to a soccer game and 3 hours home, they're 6-year-olds, and then don't have time to get in the kitchen and fix a decent meal and stop at Happy Meals on their way home? In all societal movements and changes, the periphery, the extreme examples those are solved as the boundaries of this discussion change when we deal with the easy fruit to pick. When you go pick an apple, hope some of you have picked apples, all right? Where do you start? You don't start with the highest one up in the tree. You walk up to the tree. What do? You grab the first one and you eat that one, right? And then you start picking the rest of them. Then you go to the step ladder, and then finally you go to a big ladder, okay? And you pick the easy fruit first, right? And the fact is that if everyone who could afford this food would, it would so fundamentally change the boundaries of the discussion that it would move the extremes clear out to where we can't even imagine where they'd be today. And that's the truth. Now, I'm going to get back to the single gal and I'll get back there in a minute, okay? But the fact is, we should not allow the most extreme case to become the paralysis by analysis to keep us moving forward with the fruit that's easy to pick. I mean, it's like standing under the apple tree and say, well, I can't start picking until I figure out how to pick the highest one. That's silly. See? All right. Now, the next big part of the discussion is that price is a very subjective thing right now because we have a lot of governmental manipulation in the marketplace. And so people say, well, your food is expensive to me. Well, I say my food is the cheapest priced food on the planet. Why? Because all of my costs are figured in. I'm not getting government subsidies. I'm not getting special concessions. And in fact, I'm not giving people cases of diarrhea. I'm not encouraging MRSA and C. diff in hospitals from subtherapeutic feeding of antibiotics. I'm not stinking up the community with manure and pesticides and herbicides. I'm not desertifying the landscape. Goodness, I'm taking every dollar of profit and pumping it into ponds to create hydration of the landscape, which eliminates flooding during rain events and holds the water as close to where the raindrops fall for as long as possible and helps to keep the springs and the creeks and the aquifers running for people downstreams. It's ultimately neighbor friendly. Does the government pay for any of that? No. Now the government's flying over with helicopters documenting where all the ponds are because those have become liabilities on the landscape since wood ducks and mallards and Canada geese land there and bring avian flu from the South Pole to affect Tyson chickens and destroy the planet's food supply. So our actual land healing and ecologically healing policies are viewed as liabilities in the USDA orthodoxy. And make no mistake about it, there is an orthodoxy. And it's an unholy alliance between the industrial food complex, the ag industrial food complex, and the USDA and the government entities. And those of us who refuse to adhere to that orthodoxy are branded as heretics in the great food inquisition run by the Food Modernization Act put in by Obama 2 years ago, to demonize those of us who would view disease and sickness as an indicator of mismanagement as opposed to simple, well, apparently I'm not using the right drug or the right pesticide. Mainline agriculture, that's the orthodoxy. If I have a sick plant or a sick animal, well, I just haven't gone down the list far enough to find the right drug or pesticide. When we have a sick plant or animal, we look inside and say, what did I do to you to break down your immunological terrain? The government doesn't subsidize that. But it subsidizes through our land-grant universities all the research to bring additional taxpayer-subsidized concoctions from the devil's pantry to fuel the orthodoxy of the religion of pharmaceuticals and multinational corporation food conglomerates. So there is an incredibly skewed marketplace price is what I'm trying to get to. There's a very skewed marketplace price when you go to the supermarket, when you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken or Taco Bell or McDonald's and you buy that cheap food, there is an incredible amount of collateral damage that's uncompensated in that price. The single biggest thing that a person can do to bring their price down is to buy, the price of good food down, is to buy raw foods and get in your kitchen. Now, I don't know how many of you saw the movie Food Inc. Of course, you know, I like the movie, right? Yeah, it's a powerful movie. But there's a real weakness in that movie. And I don't mind saying it, even though I love the folks that did it. I'm glad it got made. Don't read into this more than I'm saying. There's a real glaring weakness in that movie, and that's the family, remember, that stopped at Burger King on their way home and got, you know, got this, the 84-ounce glass of soda and whatever they call them at Burger King. I mean, I don't know, a big hamburger, whatever. It was like $10. And then they went to the supermarket, right, and they couldn't afford tomatoes and produce because they didn't have any money for it, right? Right now, today, at our farm, you can buy world-class, the highest quality, grass-finished, earthworm-producing, carbon-sequestering, planet-healing ground beef in the world, 2 pounds for less than that Burger King meal in Food Inc. Today, all right? Our problem is that we don't want to be in our kitchens. You know, no culture has ever spent more money techno-gadgetizing and remodeling our kitchens, been more lost as to where they are. We want everything microwavable. You know, pre-cooked, preheated, boxed, so we can graze from day to day. And we don't have to sit down as a family, and we don't have to help get the kids to come in and help us grate and grind and saute and enjoy the chemistry and the hospitality and the nexus that is a kitchen. No, we gotta get them to the soccer game. We gotta get them to the Nutcracker Suite. We gotta get them to the academic bowl. We gotta get them somewhere else because we have gutted the home as the center of life and have made everything out there what we live for, and the home is just a pit stop between where life happens. And I would suggest that an integrity food system starts with an integrity domestic culinary skill. You know, 30 years ago, I'm going to be can I be very sexist for a minute, okay? All of our customers are women, all of them. I mean, men they just open their fridge, look in and say, honey, I can't find it, and grunt. I mean, that's all men do, right? All of our customers are women. 30 years ago, all of our customers knew how to cut up a chicken. Do you know that 35 years ago, you couldn't go to a supermarket and get boneless, skinless breast? Couldn't do it. If you wanted that, you got a chicken, you took it home, you took a knife, yeah, one of those things, a knife, and you held it, and you put a cutting board, yeah, cutting board, one of those things, yeah, and you actually cut the boneless, skinless breast out, and you made it. And then you had the rest of the chicken for stock and for, chicken salad and leftovers and broth and all sorts of cool stuff, right? Well, today, half of our customers don't even know a chicken has bones. I mean, they think we just go out and pick boneless chicken breasts, they're out here in the field, and there's kind of, you pick them like cherries off a tree. I mean, Chef Ann, who started the farm to school movement in Colorado, said the first time they served thighs and drumsticks with bones in them at schools around, in the big district around Colorado. The kids all looked with dismay at this, and what do you do with this? I mean, you have to actually tell people that chicken nuggets in the form of Dino's the dinosaur is not a muscle group on a chicken. So, let's take an example, a really visceral example. And this isn't going to be about organic, non-organic, or nothing. This is just basic. Right? You walk in a supermarket. What's to the right as soon as you walk in a supermarket? Produce, right? And you go over there, and here's an 18-inch bin full of premium grade A Idaho baking potatoes, all right? Now, you go over about 2 aisles or 3 aisles, and there's a 120-foot aisle of freezer cases, talk about carbon footprint, freezer cases full of boxed, microwavable, frozen French fries, right? Now, the Idaho baking potatoes are, let's say, 89 cents a pound, all right? The boxed frozen French fries is $1.89 a pound. And if you go over 3 more aisles, there's another 120-foot aisle of crinkly little bags of things called what? Potato chips for $4.99 a pound. What's selling? Potato chips. But with your cool techno-glitzy, time-banked fry baby and some good pork fat from the local pastured pigerator producer, you can take that fry baby, take those 89-cent Idaho baking potatoes, and make with your little Cuisinart, like the things on TV, buy one, but wait, for just, shipping and handling, you can get another one for free. All the cool little chip things done. And like a little robotic samurai sword wielder, cuts everything up. All right. So you use that, and you can get potato chips to die for 89 cents a pound, and a little bit of fun and time, and getting the children involved, and everybody in the family, and spending time in the kitchen, and not being glued to the TV and to Netflix and to everybody else's world. And we need to just appreciate that one of the best things we can do about price is to domesticize and to take control, to become self-actualized and viscerally involved in getting unprocessed food into our own domestic kitchens, and using that as part of our entertainment. One of the most important, cultural, political, voting acts that you can do is to cut off funding of the processors. We don't need them. I mean, you know how easy it is to sprout alfalfa beans in your kitchen? And cheap? Oatmeal. You can buy it by the 50-pound bag. You don't need to buy little, $5.99, granola things. I mean, we haven't bought breakfast cereal. We've been married, 32 years, Teresa and I, and she still makes homemade granola in the oven that's better than anything you can ever do in the store. She gets from a bulk supply goods. She gets the bulk stuff, sunflower seeds and all this stuff, and she dries it in, and we make it for pennies on the dollar of breakfast foods. I mean, the fact that there is even a breakfast cereals aisle in the supermarket bespeaks of an incredibly disempowered, dependent, victimized, unskilled, ignorant populace. The point is, the money is out there. One of the favorite things I do is ask people, what are things that our society spends money on that we don't have to spend money on? You got to be careful about this at a college. I did this at a college, and some guy yells out, from the edge, underwear! No. Okay. But How many things do we spend money on that we don't need? I mean, do we really need a Hollywood celebrity culture? You know, do we really need pro sports? Do we really need 100 bases in 100 different countries around the world to build a U.S. empire abroad and make sure that we keep everybody under our thumb? See, the fact is, if we took all the money that was spent in the Iraq War in 1 week, and put that into the school lunch program in America, it would have doubled every single plate of food. It's you know, the budget for it, okay? For every single plate of food on every single American child's plate in the school lunch program in the entire country for more than a year. Just what we spent in 1 week. The point is, when we talk about price, don't apologize that we have an integrity price structure. The price discussion is not a discussion that's in a vacuum somewhere. It's part of a larger discussion about what we decide as a culture to value, what we decide as a family to value, what we decide as an individual to value. It's that discussion. And at the end of the day, when you see what our culture collectively, through government policies and cumulatively through individual market purchases, you begin to realize, wow, there's enough money in the system. Do we really need Monsanto? Do we really need these things? And the fact is that if all that money spent on things that we then have to spend way more money remediating 30 years down the road, if that money were spent strategically on righteous things and sacred things and ecological integrity things at the front end, we wouldn't have the remediation cost out the back end. See, we're so clever as humans. See, we can invent things and create things that we can't spiritually, emotionally, mentally, or physically metabolize. And so most of the things our culture spends money trying to fix are things that we caused. Let's just put the money in the right place at the outset, and maybe we won't have so much remediation problem. I mean, to me, it's very simple. I would be called a very simple person for saying things like that. Isn't it very complex? No, it's not. No, it's just a matter of doing the right thing. I mean, that's not rocket science. Okay. Let's bring it down. So we've got that a cheap food policy is not a good thing. We've got that the price, the bench price that people assume when they look at a bag of carrots or a bag of sweet corn or a T-bone steak in the supermarket, that is a totally skewed, inappropriate, untrue price. Okay? I mean, I really don't like the fact that I'm called an elitist when, imagine if there were 4 car companies and 3 got government subsidies of $1,000 an automobile and 1 got no subsidies and had to price his cars $1,000 higher. It wouldn't be fair to accuse him of being an elitist, would it? Of course not. And that's exactly the way I feel when people say you're an elitist, but we're not. We don't know where the government offices are. We haven't even filled out any forms. I don't have time to fill out forms. I'm too busy turning compost and building soil. I don't have time to fill out government forms, you see. Building ponds to hydrate the landscape, protect my neighbors from floods, and give them more water in the drought. Okay? That's cool. That's what floats my boat. All right. We've established that there is enough money in the system, whether you take the military, whether you take drugs, whether you take pharmaceuticals, medical, recreation, entertainment, fast food. I mean, just go down the line. There's enough clothes, fashion. I mean, sometime I want to write an article about if everybody spent like I did, what would our culture look like, you know? There'd be a lot of industries out of luck. And you know what? There would be thousands and thousands of happy, white-collar, holy farmers healing the landscape. And I suggest that that would be a better culture. So let's bring it down. How do we actually deal with the lady with the 4 children in the inner city? That brings me to the next major point, and that is much of the price prejudice on integrity food has nothing to do with production costs. It has to do with regulations. Now let's just imagine for a minute if that lady with 4 children had a bit of a green thumb, an entrepreneurial spirit, and loved her kitchen. And she went down in that inner city desert. I mean, you know, Detroit obviously is the epitome of the country now, but I mean, even Baltimore has 40,000 acres of unused land. I mean, do you know that America right now has 36 million acres of lawn and 35 million acres housing and feeding recreational horses? Now, I don't hate horses, okay? But that's 71 million acres of land. That's enough to feed the entire country without a single farm. So, down here in this inner city desert area, you know, where the city is bulldozing, tumble down, you know, houses to keep them from becoming crack houses or whatever. I've visited these places. There's a lot of empty lots, empty places. So she goes down, puts in a garden, and maybe a few chickens, maybe some rabbits. I mean, probably not a cow, but anyway, some rabbits and chickens and some, you know, produce. And she puts in this garden in a vacant lot, and then she starts bringing up all this stuff into her kitchen and making pot pies and quiche, okay? And heavy stews and soups and, are you with me? And selling them to the other condominium dweller or apartment dwellers in her complex. Does that not sound like a really cool, noble, self-empowering thing? If she did that, within 2 hours of the first person buying it, there'd be 5 bureaucrats knocking on her door with a SWAT team accusing her of having a business in a residential location, of not passing a code book of food safety laws. I call them food extortionist regulations. That's the orthodoxy. See, this is the Inquisition. She would be branded a heretic. I mean, she's turning her kitchen into a place of food production. You can't do that. You know, now it's a commercial establishment. We need to upgrade the trusses and the roof rafters in the buildings to business and commercial class, not residential class. We need to have handicap access. We need to have make sure that there are, if she needs to go to the bathroom, that the bathroom is OSHA approved with handicapped access in case she has ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Folks, you can't food bank your way out of food insecurity. Ultimately, food security comes when we localize our food independence and we surround ourselves in proximity with the abundance this earth wants to make and not live in a segregationist situation, but an integrationist situation. You know, the old merchant above his shop, the old integrated society where you could walk to work, where you lived, where your business was. I mean, this is still done all over the world. Only in our country do we have the luxury and the wealth to even consider separating economic universes in our cities. I think it's really cool when you see pictures of, for example, Tokyo or Hong Kong, where you have high-rise, office buildings, and 100 feet away there are little, makeshift shacks where people live. Now, I'm not a fan of the makeshift shacks, but I think it's good for the six-figure salary business person toting his briefcase to work every day to walk by that. In our culture, we've segregated those sectors. We've even segregated to the point where, all the fast food joints can go on this street, all the houses that can be 1,500 square feet are going to go on this street, the ones with 1,200 square feet are go on this street, and the ones with 1,000 square feet, we don't want the 1,000 square feeters to be near the 1,500 square feeters. They might get jealous, or the 1,500 square feeters might look down on the 1,000. We got all this nutso segregation to where the culture becomes stratified into what should be a wonderful, diversified hodgepodge of cacophony of integrated ideas and economic interests. One of the biggest reasons that our prices are more expensive is because of the prejudicial, non-scalable effect of food safety laws. When we ask for government security, what we're asking is for little upstarts like us to be prejudiced at the marketplace. Let me give you an example. Our bacon is $11 a pound. $11 a pound. Why? Well, because in order to be legal for sale, A, we can't butcher the pigs on our farm. We're in an agricultural zone. Agricultural zones can't butcher animals. They need to be taken to federally inspected slaughterhouses way over here with bathrooms and bureaucrats to sign off on HACCP plans and paperwork that is itself extremely prejudicial. So the little slaughterhouse that we use with 18 employees has the same paperwork every week as an Iowa beef packers, and the same thing would be true with strawberries, mescaline mix, anything in the food industry. I'm talking about animals simply because we raise animals. But if I was making applesauce or tomato juice or vegetarian quiche, it's the same thing, tofu, whatever. The fact is that all the regulations, every single time the government puts its nose in the marketplace, it always gives concessions to the big players and prejudices the small players. Every single time. And so what happens is, it takes us $450 to do to a beef carcass what Iowa beef packers running 5,000 head a day through a facility with 1,000 employees. Yeah, just imagine the blood, the guts, the smell, the inability to police it, we use legal labor. I mean, I could go in numerous ramifications. I mean, talk about an industry concession in Virginia. That 20 years ago, the carpal tunnel syndrome in poultry plants in Virginia, kind of where the poultry industry was started, was bankrupting the state workman's comp program with all the workers filing for relief from repetitive motion syndrome in the meat packing plants, in the poultry plants. So you know what the poultry industry did? It lobbied the Virginia General Assembly to declare that carpal tunnel syndrome was not a workplace-related injury. Now, what we've done is we have designed our system so that no worker kills animals every day. No worker does the same thing every day. One day you're doing this, running these muscles, and another day you're doing this, running these muscles, and another day you're doing this, running these muscles. And so we don't develop, but we don't get any concessionary help because our people don't get repetitive motion sickness. That's a direct incentive and concession for an inherently culturally destructive food practice. And that's not even addressed in organics or anything. Even Humane Society doesn't even address that. They're far more interested in the humaneness of the chickens than the people that are butchering the chickens. So, why is our bacon so expensive? Because it has to go to a slaughterhouse. We can't butcher the pigs on the farm. We can't have slaughterhouses on farms. I mean, we can't butcher the pigs where they were raised. We got to get them on an interstate in a trailer, buy gas, buy fuel, make GDP. Because after all, what's wrong with us creates more GDP than what's right with us. a la Wendell Berry. So we go up there. We go into a small-scale neighborhood abattoir I just described the prejudicial effects there. And then, to get it cured, we have to go to another federal inspected facility, another road trip, to another place that charges $5 a pound because it's small batches, not tractor-trailer loads at a time. Same government forms and paperwork, you see, to cure it, package it, and get a legal label on it so that it can do another road trip, come back to the farm where the pig was raised in order for us to sell to our neighbors. If we could just butcher the pig on site, cure the bacon right on site, and sell it on site to our neighbors, we could undersell Walmart. But because it has to go through this prejudicially circuitous road that is unscalable, it has an inherent problem, price prejudice. So, as we wind down, what's an answer to all this? Well, I mean, an answer is a food emancipation proclamation that would emancipate local person-to-person food commerce from an industrial bureaucracy. That would be a nice thing to do. But beyond that, we've got the whole local food scene. CSAs, community-supported agriculture, very cumbersome. I love them, but they're very cumbersome in the marketplace. We've got farmers markets. Again, I love them. Very, very cumbersome. They're logistic problems. Few people really buy their groceries at farmers markets. They're not, at times that are conducive to people. The farm has to come off his farm to be there. There are a lot of problems with farmers markets. So very quickly, in conclusion, one of the things that we are doing is what we call a metropolitan buying club, which is a totally private, non-government retail interface where we're essentially co-opting the kind of software that Amazon.com uses for global commerce on the internet, co-opting that for a localized food system that takes the physical bricks, mortar, and cash register out of the retail interface. Suddenly, you have a virtual universe, a virtual shopping cart, so people can shop in their own bedrooms at 1 o'clock in the morning if they want to and have the discussion about, honey, do you want a porterhouse or a T-bone, or do you want this or that? And they can do that there instead of taking up my time in front of a cash register at a farmer's market. They can have those discussions in the privacy of their own home at 1 o'clock. And people do shop at 1 o'clock. I mean, you look at the ticks, I don't know, I'm in bed at 1 o'clock, But people can shop on their own time, and we just have this virtual supermarket and on the internet, and we can collaborate with other people, and we can put other stuff on. So there becomes a wonderful size, scalable kind of thing to where we can go with already sold, pre-ordered product, no speculative sales, to a drop point right in a location where people from that location can meet us. And it makes the physical transaction a 5-minute deal, and we don't have to upkeep the bricks and mortar and a cash register that are themselves very non-scalable in a retail interface. And I love it when we take what's been developed to create a globalist economy and co-opt it to make a functional, localized economy. It's like a guerrilla coup, It's really cool. It's like subterfuge. It's like the ultimate rebellion revolution, And there are now numerous software designers in the U.S. that are creating virtual farmers markets now, to where communities are having a distribution system involving maybe 30 or 40 regional farmers to create a cornucopia of abundance so that you're not limited to just what your CSA has. You're not just limited to what the farmer's market has. You're not limited, and you don't have to go all around all these different stops. Now you can shop on the virtual farmer's market, see everything that's there in real time, real place, and it takes all of that very inefficient, small-scale traveling and distribution, gets it on a much bigger truck to a centralized location that's in proximity to you, and takes all of the bricks and mortar and mass and inertia out of the retail transaction. And for the first time, our prices are under even organic brand name prices at Walmart. Because we have taken all of that distribution, inventorying, middlemen, slow pay, all of the things that are in that industrial food system. Remember, supermarkets have only been here since 1946. They're a very new institution. They're very cumbersome, and they can go as quickly as they came. But they're not going to go with very duplicative, cumbersome, high overhead retail infrastructure. The reason the supermarket exists is because it's a one-stop shop. And so by creating an electronic, localized, bioregional one-stop shop, we can duplicate the best of the supermarket without all the negatives of the industrial superstructure that creates the overheads. And that is a way to make these prices plummet and to compete head-to-head with the supermarket in price. And it's been very exciting to watch our competitiveness just chip away until now we're actually way lower than Whole Foods. And that's exciting. I'm going to stop there. I think we have time for a couple of questions. And we've got a microphone here. Don't be bashful. And we'll deal with, what did we say, three? Do three questions, and then we'll call it a day.
I see in the Walmart or the grocery stores that you can get a roasted chicken for a small one for about $5 or $6. I shop at my local farmers market there in Gilbert, Arizona, and the people that bring the organic chicken there, I'm paying $23 on average for that same size chicken. Is that to be expected? Is that just as low as they can offer it, or is that a little bit inflated? Because it feels 4.5 times as much. It feels a little inflated to me.
Sure. It's a great question. Everybody hear the question? All right. Let me answer it a couple ways. Number one, Whole Foods is a great marketer, but they talk a lot better than they walk. And of course, some of you may not know that Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma almost bankrupted Whole Foods within 6 months of that book coming out, when he exposed that the little red hen from Petaluma Poultry or whatever was really, a confinement chicken house, blah, blah, blah. He went in search of the red hen, that was on the thing. And so there is a tremendous amount of yak, and not much do at Whole Foods. They do a great job of merchandising. The way they present their nuts and their stuff, it's cool, all right? From a merchandising standpoint, they're as good as it gets, all right? But that's all it is, merchandising. And so, is that chicken organic that you're buying? No, the cheap chicken at Whole Foods. It's natural. Yeah, okay. Well, anybody know what natural means? Yeah, not much, all right? It's the lowest of the low. So Whole Foods has a whole echelon. Now, they would like you to think, with their mission statement and all this stuff, that they are true blue. But no, they have a whole echelon of quality, all right? And so that bird is probably just an antibiotic-free Tyson chicken, all right? Raised in confinement with everything else, with, GMO corn and whatever, okay? Never sees the light of day, whatever. Okay. Now, let's go to the farmer's market chicken at $23. Is that price inflated? Let me say two things about that. Yes, the price may be inflated, all right? But number two, you have to understand that in order for you to get that chicken at the farmer's market, the farmer has to leave his farm. Well, now who's going to water the chickens at 10 o'clock? Okay? And that's my whole point, there is a huge cost. I hate to say this because I'm going to get branded as an anti-farmer's market person, but there are very few successful farmers that when they become successful continue at farmers markets because they are so cumbersome, They have lots of rules, big commissions, lots of times a 10 to 15% commission. Well, 10 to 15% on $20 is $3. Okay, well, that just dropped it to 20. Are you with me? And there are a lot of extremely expensive kinds of things there. And the fact is that that many of the practices of farmers, especially pasture-based organic farmers, are inefficient. And they're not operating at a scale that allows them to have some economies of scale. Now, I know when I say economies of scale, these red flags go up, right? But there is such a thing as economies of scale. Listen, we have 100 chicken shelters that we go out and move physically every day, 100 of them. It takes the same amount of time to go out, to walk out a half a mile to the field to those 100 shelters as if we had 2. Are you with me? So there are economies of scale, and many times that's part of what you're seeing. I would encourage you to see what bulk buying on the side would do. One of the things that we've done is create the larder. One of the most successful marketing things we ever did was 2 years ago. We instituted the polyface larder option for people who wanted to buy large volumes and get a huge price break. It kicks in at like 10 chickens. It kicks in at like a quarter of a beef. And what that does is honor thinking ahead, planning ahead, and turning your own home into your larder. We don't even use the word larder anymore, do we? But just 50 years ago, if I went to your community and said, "Where's the food here?" we'd go from house to house, look in the pantries and the jars of beans and the chest freezer and all this, and we would see your larder, right? Canned goods. I mean, Teresa, she still cans about 800 quarts of stuff a year. When she sends me shopping, I just go to the basement with her list. Yep, beans, sauerkraut, pickled beets, and I come up with my box of groceries. All right? That's the way we go shopping. If we could figure out how to grow toilet paper and Kleenex in the garden, we could pull the plug on society. And so think about planning ahead, buying in bulk, and dealing directly with a farmer outside that venue. Okay. Next question. Yes.
I'd like to take you back to a comment that you made about Obama, and it sounded as though Obama's administration is the problem. This has been going on a long, long time.
Absolutely.
How do you address the farmer in Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, wherever, that has a really desire to grow organic, that tries it, that is blackmailed, that is white, that is cut off from any other services because they don't play the corporate game? Then they try to go small and they cannot. What is the rest of the farm community, the agricultural community, who has power, who are the people? The people have the power in this country. Why is it that the people are not saying no to Monsanto, no to the government, with the power to say we want the organic, we want the safe food, we want the money to go, instead of to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to wherever, to go to the schools, to go to the families, to go to... Why is it still an excuse for, in a sense, going to the privatization of the profit in the small elitist community that you're sort of mentioning, which I honor you, but most people have never touched foot on a farm, connected with these people whose desire is to live that old farm life, but are blackmailed, blacklisted, and wiped off the face of the map. How do you address that as a huge, powerful agricultural community of knowledgeable people?
Well, you brought up a lot of good points, and there's certainly no disagreement. One of the biggest surprises people have when they come and visit us is, they think that our neighbor farmers are leaning on the fence, looking over, drooling. I wish I could have a farm like that, that was green in a drought and that didn't have a vet bill and blah, blah, blah. But in fact, we're typhoid Marys in our community. And I've been very upfront that from day one, our support group was not the agricultural community, We were blacklisted. We're still blacklisted. We're still called Typhoid Mary and terrorists. We're called bioterrorists by the farmers, by the Virginia Poultry Federation, because we're so negligent that we don't vaccinate our chickens, and they might rub beaks because they're outdoors. They might rub beaks with a red-winged blackbird who will bring them diseases and then take their diseases to the science-based Tyson chicken houses and threaten the planet's food supply. And so you have this whole, group of sanctimonious, self-righteous people in their pews at church feeling very good about the fact that they are feeding the planet and demonizing and trying to criminalize people like us who would threaten the planet's food supply. This is reality, and I absolutely understand. The fact is, we have not gotten where we are overnight, and we won't get out of where we are overnight, and there will be a tremendous amount of cultural, societal disturbance as we move out. And I wish I had a formula, okay? But everybody who tries to swim upstream is going to get hit by a head current. And so all I can do is tell that family, my dad used to say, if at first you don't suck a seed, just suck and suck and suck until you do suck a seed. Just keep after it. Failure is not the opposite of success. Giving up is the opposite of success, because all successful people have failed just as many times as unsuccessful, except the last time. So the difference between success and failure is getting up, not getting knocked down. And I would suggest, too, one other thing is that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. We all have this stigma as adults. This old, matriarch or patriarch behind us saying, if it's worth doing right. Yeah, that's wrong. If it's worth doing poorly first. Who does it right the first time? I mean, can you imagine going to a Thanksgiving party with your family, and there's the newest little family edition, little, Anne Marie, she's 8 months old, she's crawling around in her diapers, and then all of a sudden she comes over, she gets a hold of a chair leg, and she, kind of climbs up this chair leg, and she's kind of tottering there, and, terrified, and suddenly, probably her mother sees her first and says, oh, look, Anne Marie's starting to walk. It's the first time she stood. And of course, all the adults look over at Anne Marie, and she realizes suddenly she's the center of attention. She smiles and all this, loses her focus, and plop down her diaper. What does everybody do? Get around her and say, well, Anne Marie, if you can't walk any better than that, just quit. No, they say, oh, look, come over here, try again, get up. If it's worth doing poorly first. Nobody walks well first, or talks well first, or writes well first, or poops. Well, maybe we do poop, but we don't know where to put it. But these things are all learned things, right? And if it's worth doing poorly first. So the next time you're swimming against the stream and you find yourself blackmailed and you find yourself faltering and unable to get to the punch through, go up to your mirror, hike up your diapers, and look at it and say, if it's worth doing poorly first, because that's the truth. One last question.
One quick question.
Is there somebody else with a question? Here's one right here.
This is a quick one. So your club that you have, are you working with other states to incorporate that outside of where you're from, Virginia?
Virginia.
Yes.
The only thing that we're doing, I'm a very decentralized, entrepreneurial, do your own thing deal. I'm not a franchisor or an empire builder. And so all we're doing is publicizing it. I'm writing articles about it. And in fact, we have an instructional 40-minute video coming out in the next couple of months about it, part of our Polyface Primer series. And so that is coming out as well. We just want others to go out and do it. And it has already been duplicated many times around different states, and every time it's a real breakthrough. Because it enables farmers to work together. I mean, I call it's guerrilla marketing. I mean, it's so new and so spontaneous that there are no regulations. Nobody knows about it. It's like a drug trip, you know. I mean, we go in there with our contraband. Everybody meets us at the appointed time, gives us cash, takes their stuff home. We throw the empty coolers in, and we're head back to Dodge, you know. I mean, it's really so nebulous that nobody knows about it yet. And so we think that there's a lot of possibility in it. To the lady's question back here about the farmer, I'll just add that I'm in another month to 6 weeks, I'll come out with another book, which is, the title is Fields of Farmers, Interning, Mentoring, Partnering, and Germinating Tomorrow's Farmers. And it's all about collaborative stacking, partnering, multi-generational succession, building entrepreneurial farms on existing land bases to create multi-generational succession operations that are non-family and entrepreneurial, non-employee things. And so we're hoping that that will help to incentivize some of these successional issues. Okay. I have certainly enjoyed visiting with you. You've been wonderful. Now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large and not pithy. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be palatably delectable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make the world a better place than we found it. Thank you so much for letting me visit with you. Thank you. You're very kind.